I understand, members, that this is the only microphone that's working. And that's not actually working either. So I just wondered, is it possible that we can we turn that round there so they speak from here?
Yeah, I'll see whether we can get another microphone. We can, yeah.
Well, what I propose, members, order, please. Yeah, what I propose is, if the member, while we can hear and hear this, they can't be heard externally other than through this mic here. So I'm going to invite members to come forward and speak from here, and we'll just turn this around. So until we get something. Sorry? No, we're in committee stage, so we can't go up there. No. So I'm inviting another member to take the call. Are there any further speakers to take calls? Well, Dr. Russell Norman, do you want to come up here and we'll... On this side here.
Oh, I was going to go.
No, you're not going to.
Members should answer questions, not just address them. That would be my... Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that working? Is that working? All right. All right. Well, it's great to be speaking on the government's financial position, because there's been quite a lot of debate about that today. And particularly I'd like to draw attention to the cost of the asset sale program and the big impact that is having on the government's books. According to Treasury, the cost will be about $441 million over 5 years. That's the net cost, and that's a result of the fact that the dividends or profits that the government earns on these assets is much greater than the cost of debt, which is being replaced by the sale of the assets. Treasury estimates that the net cost of the government's asset sale program is $441 million. That's a giant hole in the government's books. When you add to that the $100 million that the government's proposing to spend, at least initially on the asset sale program, you end up with a $540 million hole in the government books as a result of the government's asset sale program. So the question to the government is, with a $500 million hole in the government's books as a result of the asset sale program, what are they going to cut? What are they going to cut? Are they going to increase revenue, or are they going to borrow more in order to cover this giant hole in the government books? If the purpose, if your aim was to protect the government's finances, then you wouldn't go down this path, because this path, according to the government's own figures, is going to cost at least $541 million. On top of that, we have the share giveaway program, which is at the moment unquantified. If the government persists in its share giveaway scheme, it could cost tens of millions of dollars on top of that. Depending on how large it would be, it could be $100 million. We don't know, because the government hasn't announced what the program looks like, and also because the government itself doesn't know what the uptake of the share giveaway or the loyalty bonus scheme will be. The question for the government is, why is this worth spending $500 million on? Why is it worth $500 million to go down this path? This comes against the background of the broader economic management of the government, which is very problematic. We have a current account deficit that's 5% and rising. When the Minister of Finance first came into office, he talked a lot about rebalancing the New Zealand economy. By that he meant reducing the current account deficit, amongst other things. And yet now we hear very little from the government about rebalancing the economy, because essentially it has failed. We have a 5% current account deficit, and it is growing and projected to increase further down the track. That seems to me a fundamental failure for the government in terms of the current account deficit. Yep, the government doesn't want to hear about this. The government doesn't want to hear about this. They want the sound system to be off. But the reality is, when you look at the numbers, that the current account deficit is 5% and growing. and guaranteed to get worse under the current economic settings. Of course, on top of that, we have very high rates of unemployment. Under this government, we've had the highest and second highest rates of unemployment since National was last in government, around 7%. And that itself is, I think, a real indication and really, a fail mark in terms of the government's economic strategy, broader than just the fiscal strategy. Now, there are many. The government, has told us about it. Has 300 initiatives and so forth around its economic management, well, good on them. But when it comes down to these macroeconomic indicators, you'd have to say that 4 years in, you can't blame the last government for it. 4 years in, the government itself has put itself in a big hole and has created a big problem. Not to mention, I think, kind of one of the underlying problems, which is that the attempts with the RMA reforms and others to degrade the environment will undermine the long-term performance of the New Zealand economy, because it will undermine the environmental capital on which we all depend for the long-term sustainability of the New Zealand economy. So it's not just the fiscal performance which is in trouble. It's not just the broader macroeconomic performance, which, when you look at the current account deficit, that's in trouble, or the unemployment numbers. It's also the underlying environmental or natural capital on which our economy long-term depends. And if we continue to degrade that natural capital, as National is proposing to do, then in the long-term economic picture becomes very difficult as well. We've been also discussing on the manufacturing inquiry, looking at what's happening in the manufacturing sector, which we believe in the Greens is very important, and we're very interested in the development of the green manufacturing sector in particular. We've seen the loss of 40,000 jobs over 4 years. This is a long-term trend. It's not simply a result of what this government has done. It is a long-term trend, but under this government it's continued to get worse. We think that what happens in manufacturing is important because it's a high-value sector, and because it's critical, if we are to rebalance our economy, that the manufacturing sector performs as well, not just the primary sector.
I'm going to call Paul Goldsmith. Now, the member must use the microphone, the handheld one. Yes, Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to speak on